Cameroon, officially the Republic of Cameroon, is a Central African nation often called Africa in miniature due to its remarkable diversity of geography, climate, cultures, and languages. Located at the crossroads between West and Central Africa, Cameroon covers 475,442 square kilometers and is home to over 27 million people, representing more than 250 ethnic groups, speaking over 270 languages. This extraordinary diversity reflects the country's complex history as a meeting point of different African civilizations, European colonial powers, and modern political systems. Archaeological evidence suggests human habitation in present-day Cameroon dates back thousands of years. The region's diverse geography attracted various populations and facilitated the development of distinct societies. By 1000 BCE, Bantu-speaking peoples began migrating through the region, bringing ironworking technology and agricultural practices. These migrations fundamentally shaped the demographic and cultural landscape, as Bantu groups either displaced or assimilated earlier hunter-gatherer populations like the Baka. The Iron Age brought significant changes. Iron tools revolutionized agriculture, allowing for forest clearance and intensive farming. This led to population growth, permanent settlements, and increasingly complex social organizations with extensive trade networks. One of the most significant early civilizations was the Sao culture, which flourished in the Lake Chad basin from around 500 CE to 1600 CE. The Sao people were skilled metalworkers and potters, creating distinctive terracotta sculptures and bronze artifacts. Archaeological excavations revealed Sao settlements with complex urban planning, defensive walls, and specialized craft quarters. The Sao developed extensive trade networks connecting the Lake Chad region to North Africa, representing one of the earliest examples of state formation in the region. In the forest regions, various kingdoms emerged over the centuries. The Douala people became prominent traders and intermediaries between inland populations and European merchants from the 15th century onward. The Bamum kingdom, established in the 14th century in the Western Highlands, developed into one of the most sophisticated pre-colonial states in Central Africa. Under King Njoya, 1883–1933, the Bamum created a unique writing system and maintained detailed historical records. In the grasslands, numerous chiefdoms developed complex political systems. The Tikar, Bamileke, and Bamenda peoples created sophisticated kingdoms with divine kingship, intricate art traditions, and extensive trade networks. The northern regions came under Islamic influence through trans-Saharan trade and the Kanem-Bornu Empire expansion. From the 11th century onward, Islamic traders and missionaries brought new religious practices and commercial networks. The Fulani jihad movements of the 19th century significantly transformed northern Cameroon. Fulani pastoralists conquered existing communities, establishing Islamic emirates including Adamawa, Marua, and Garua, which became centers of Islamic learning and commerce. Portuguese explorers first reached the Cameroon coast in 1472, naming the Wouri River Rio dos Camarões, River of Prawns. The Portuguese established trading relationships with coastal peoples, particularly the Douala, exchanging European goods for ivory, palm oil, and later, enslaved people. The Atlantic slave trade devastated Cameroon societies. Coastal peoples became intermediaries, organizing the capture and transport of people from inland regions. Millions were forcibly transported to the Americas, disrupting societies and altering traditional political structures. The Berlin Conference of 1884–85 partitioned Africa among European powers, with Germany claiming Cameroon. German rule was characterized by economic exploitation, forced labor, and violent suppression of resistance. The Germans established plantations for crops like cocoa and coffee, using forced labor to develop infrastructure, including railways and ports. They built the railway from Douala to Yaoundé and established Douala as the economic hub. German administration was harsh and exploitative. Traditional rulers were co-opted or replaced, while populations faced heavy taxation, forced labor, and land appropriation. Resistance movements emerged, including the Douala resistance led by Rudolf Douala Manga Bel, who was executed in 1914. World War I ended German rule when British and French forces occupied Cameroon in 1916. The League of Nations divided the territory between Britain and France as mandate territories in 1922, creating different colonial experiences with lasting consequences. French Cameroon, comprising 80% of the territory, was administered as part of French Equatorial Africa. The French implemented direct rule, imposing French culture and language while suppressing local traditions. They established educational systems, but limited higher education and political participation. British Cameroon was divided into northern and southern regions, administered as part of Nigeria. British indirect rule worked through traditional authorities, allowing greater cultural autonomy while introducing English and British systems. This created distinct linguistic and cultural differences that continue today. The post-World War II period saw nationalist movements demanding independence. The Union of the Populations of Cameroon, UPC, founded in 1948 by Reuben Nyobe, became the most significant independence movement, advocating for immediate independence and reunification. French authorities banned the UPC in 1955, forcing it underground and sparking an armed struggle lasting from 1955 to 1971. This conflict was one of Africa's most violent independence struggles, resulting in hundreds of thousands of deaths. Key UPC leaders included Reuben Nyobe, killed by French forces in 1958, and Félix Roland Moumié, assassinated in Geneva in 1960. The French government successfully suppressed the rebellion through brutal military campaigns and political repression. French Cameroon gained independence on January 1, 1960, with Amadou Ahidjo as the first president. Ahidjo, a northern Muslim politician, had collaborated with French authorities and continued receiving French support after independence. Early independence was marked by continued UPC conflict, French military intervention, and efforts to build national unity. Ahidjo gradually consolidated power, establishing an authoritarian one-party state while maintaining close ties with France. In 1961, a UN-supervised plebiscite in British Cameroon resulted in southern Cameroons voting to join the Republic of Cameroon, while northern Cameroons chose to remain with Nigeria. This created the Federal Republic of Cameroon in October 1961, with distinct Francophone and Anglophone regions. The federal structure was intended to preserve the distinct identities and institutions of the former British and French territories. However, President Ahidjo gradually centralized power and reduced Anglophone autonomy, creating tensions that persist today. Under Ahidjo's leadership, Cameroon pursued state-led economic development based on agricultural exports, particularly cocoa and coffee. Oil discovery in the 1970s provided additional revenue for infrastructure and industrialization. However, Ahidjo's regime was increasingly authoritarian. He banned opposition parties, suppressed dissent, and created a powerful security apparatus. The Cameroon National Union became the sole legal political party. Despite authoritarianism, Ahidjo achieved relative stability and economic growth through careful management of ethnic diversity, though at the cost of democratic freedoms. In 1972, Ahidjo abolished the federal system through a controversial referendum, creating the United Republic of Cameroon as a unitary state. This decision was strongly opposed by many Anglophones, who saw it as an attempt to eliminate their distinct identity and institutions. The constitutional change centralized power in Yaoundé and imposed French as the dominant language and legal system throughout the country. This created the foundation for the Anglophone problem that continues to affect Cameroon today. Amadou Ahidjo unexpectedly resigned in 1982, handing power to his constitutional successor, Paul Biya, who was then prime minister. Biya, a southern Christian intellectual, initially promised democratic reforms and national reconciliation. The transition was not smooth, as tensions emerged between Ahidjo and Biya over control of the ruling party and security apparatus. An attempted coup in April 1984, allegedly supported by Ahidjo, failed but led to a purge of northern political and military leaders. Biya renamed the country the Republic of Cameroon in 1984, dropping United from the official name, a symbolic rejection of the federal heritage that further alienated Anglophones. He also renamed the ruling party the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM.
The mid-1980s brought severe economic crisis as commodity prices collapsed and oil revenues declined. The CFA franc was overvalued, public debt soared, and living standards plummeted. By the early 1990s, Cameroon was forced to implement World Bank and IMF structural adjustment programs. These programs required privatization of state enterprises, reduction of public sector employment, and elimination of subsidies. While they eventually restored macroeconomic stability, they also increased unemployment, poverty, and social tensions. Growing domestic pressure and international demands for democratization forced Biya to legalize opposition parties in 1990. The transition was marked by massive protests, strikes, and civil disobedience campaigns organized by opposition groups and civil society. The first multi-party presidential election in 1992 was controversial, with opposition candidate John Frundi claiming victory amid allegations of electoral fraud. International observers noted irregularities, but Biya was declared the winner, sparking protests and political violence. Despite introducing multi-party competition, Biya and the CPDM have maintained power through control of electoral processes, state resources, and security forces. Opposition parties remain fragmented and face significant constraints on their activities. Long-standing grievances among Anglophones erupted into major protests in 2016. Initially led by lawyers and teachers demanding the restoration of Anglophone legal and educational systems. The government's harsh response to peaceful protests radicalized the movement, leading to calls for independence. The crisis escalated into armed conflict when separatist groups declared the independence of Ambazonia in 2017. The government response has been predominantly military, with thousands killed, hundreds of thousands internally displaced, and over 70,000 refugees fleeing to Nigeria. The Anglophone crisis represents Cameroon's most serious internal conflict since independence, highlighting fundamental issues of governance, inclusion, and national identity that remain unresolved. President Biya, now in his fifth decade of power, faces multiple challenges including persistent poverty, corruption, terrorism from Boko Haram in the north, the Anglophone crisis, and growing demands for political change from younger generations. Economic growth has been inconsistent, and despite significant natural resources including oil, minerals, and timber, most Cameroonians remain poor. Youth unemployment is particularly high, fueling emigration and social unrest. Cameroon's strategic importance has grown due to its role in regional security, particularly in fighting Boko Haram and hosting refugees from Central African Republic and Nigeria. However, governance challenges and conflicts have limited the country's potential for development and regional leadership. Cameroon's linguistic diversity is extraordinary, with over 270 indigenous languages plus French and English as official languages. This diversity reflects the country's complex ethnic composition and colonial history, but also creates communication challenges and tensions over language policy. The government has promoted French as the dominant language, marginalizing English and indigenous languages. This has contributed to Anglophone grievances and raised concerns about cultural preservation among various ethnic groups. Cameroon has a rich artistic tradition combining indigenous crafts with modern forms. Traditional arts include sculpture, masks, textiles, and architecture, particularly famous among the Bamum, Bamilek, and other ethnic groups. Modern Cameroonian literature has gained international recognition through writers like Mongo Betty, Ferdinand Ayono, and Calix Biala, who have explored themes of colonialism, independence, and social change. Cameroonian music, including Makassa and Bikutsi styles, has achieved continental popularity. Cameroon possesses significant natural resources including oil, natural gas, timber, minerals, and agricultural products. Oil production peaked in the 1980s but remains important, while the country has potential for further mineral exploitation including bauxite, iron ore, and diamond deposits. Agriculture employs about 60% of the population, with cocoa and coffee as major export crops. The country also produces cotton, rubber, bananas, and palm oil for export markets. Despite natural resource wealth, Cameroon remains a lower middle-income country with significant development challenges. Infrastructure deficits limit economic growth, particularly in transportation, energy, and telecommunications. The government has pursued major infrastructure projects including ports, roads, and hydroelectric dams often financed by Chinese loans. However, debt sustainability concerns have emerged as external debt has increased substantially. Cameroon's history reflects the broader African experience of complex pre-colonial societies, traumatic colonial disruption, and challenging post-independence development. The country's extraordinary diversity represents both its greatest asset and most significant challenge. The colonial partition between France and Britain created lasting divisions that continue to affect national unity and governance. While Cameroon has avoided the devastating conflicts experienced by some neighbors, persistent grievances and authoritarian governance have created internal tensions that threaten stability. The ongoing Anglophone crisis represents a critical test of Cameroon's ability to manage diversity and build inclusive institutions. Resolution will require addressing fundamental questions about federalism, language policy, and political participation that have been postponed since independence. Cameroon's future depends on developing governance systems that accommodate its diversity while building national unity. The country's strategic location, natural resources, and human capital provide foundations for development, but realizing this potential requires addressing long-standing grievances and building more inclusive political and economic institutions.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more engaging historical content.